We are in central Tehran. The Supreme Leader's quarters are just a 10-minute ride away. It's day 12 of our mission here. We decided to take a walk in what looked like a regular, unrestricted area. I'm really scared. Literally 5 minutes after that, a car pulled over next to us, and some men in civilian clothes approached ordering us to stop using the camera and to give them our documents. I have no idea what's going on now. Please don't call a ride until I found out what's going on. I will let you know as soon as I know at least something. My hands are still shaking, my heart is pounding, and I feel sick. We've just been questioned for a good hour and a half by the secret police. I suddenly developed a case of paranoia. Every man on every corner started to look suspicious to me, like they're watching me and listening to every word I say. First, we were approached by men in civilian clothes, who started asking us who we were, what we were doing here, where we were staying, and going. Then 2 policemen joined them, and they started questioning us even harder. They wanted to know everything: name, family, children, job, and so on. They started looking through our phones. They started looking through the pictures we had taken. They took photos of all the documents we had on us, every single piece of paper. It was very frightening. It was scary as hell. After being questioned, I hurried to the hotel to see if all my SD cards with the photos and video I took were still there. Those guys wrote down the hotel name and our room numbers too. Dear people, we are in Iran. The 1979 Islamic Revolution turned Iran into one of the most conservative countries in the world. The state has a full control of everything its citizens can and cannot do, especially women. They can't be seen in public with their heads uncovered, they can't wear t-shirts, they can't ride motorbikes, and so on. All major international corporations stopped operating in the country, but the most recent wave of protests has put things into motion, and things started to change. Today we will tell you how people live in Tehran. This is the People Project with Alexandra Sabynina.
Are you subscribed to our channel? Not yet? The sad thing is that Anton can't go on his next adventure until you do. So pretty please, subscribe now. That's right. Go ahead, click subscribe. Well done and thank you. We can continue now.
Look, a young woman is walking the streets of Tehran without a headscarf. Then another. Some even smiled seeing the camera. Then we saw a couple riding a bike. The girl's hand rests on the guy's leg, and the wind goes through her hair. Why am I drawing your attention to this? You see, the law in Iran forbids girls to be in public without a headscarf from the age of 9. This offense is punishable by a fine or incarceration, or sometimes the offender can be accused of undermining the state authority. Even having your scarf on the shoulders like this while you eat ice cream and laugh means taking a risk for them. In 2022, the tragic fate of one girl from Iran made the world gasp. In mid-September 2022, the government's religious morality police arrested Mahsa Amini for allegedly wearing her headscarf improperly. Stories with her photo in a coma in a hospital broke in the social and opposition media on September 15th. Witnesses came forward to say she was severely beaten by the police. On September 16th, Mahsa Amini died. And on the same day, people took to the streets to protest her death near the hospital she died in. Within a week's time, the protests spread all over Iran. People carried Mahsa portraits. Woman, life, freedom became the slogan of the protesters. Women removed their hijabs to set them on fire and publicly cut their hair as acts of protest and grief. By the end of September, the protests increased, getting more violent. People set trash cans on fire and threw bottle bombs in administrative buildings. They demanded not only justice for Mahsa and the end of hijab law, but they wanted the current regime gone. Iran is an Islamic republic, and it really has strict and inhumane laws. For instance, death penalty can be the punishment not only for murder, but also for infidelity. Women all over the world, including actresses, politicians, and activists, cut their hair in solidarity with the women in Iran, publishing the act in social media. Iranian climber Elnaz Rakabi competed without a hijab in protest, and Iranian football fans wore t-shirts with Amini's portraits to the 2022 FIFA World Cup Games. These protests were described as unlike any the country had seen before, and as the most widespread uprising in the modern history of the Iran. And the government's crackdown inevitably followed in an attempt to quash the protests with force. According to the UN, at least 14,000 people were arrested, and according to the Human Rights Watch, at least 458 people were killed as a result of the government's response to the protests. Police was seen beating the protesters, using tear gas and even live munitions, shooting at the demonstrators. But nonetheless, the protests continued until December. Formally, the protesters failed to achieve their goals. The hijab law stayed, and the family of Mahsa Amini never saw justice. But something seriously changed in the society at large. Tehran has seriously changed. See, a mother in a headscarf is accompanied by her daughter with her head uncovered. This is how I walk around Tehran. I have a headscarf on my shoulders, and whenever I start feeling uncomfortable, I put it over my head. Overall, no one gives me any trouble, but not because I am a woman. It's because I am a foreigner. I always wear a shirt with long sleeves that goes down to my knees, and I wear pants with wide legs. In other words, I don't give anyone any pretext to pick on me for how I dress. After the protests, the police seems to have become more relaxed about women not wearing hijab in the streets. But no, the authorities have not changed their stance. They simply changed their tactics. For example, they started to track women driving without a headscarf with the help of traffic cameras. You know, like there are cameras to capture you driving without using safety belt in other countries. Here in Iran, they take snapshots of women without a hijab driving a car. And this measure has been able to achieve a fairly high level of compliance because, as the locals have told us, if this offense was punishable by a fine, they wouldn't have bothered and simply would keep paying whatever is due. But the thing is that the government started issuing warnings for every offense, and after a certain number of warnings, car owners face restrictions on the car use. Their car can be impounded. Also, a car with such warnings can be difficult to sell. In addition to the traffic cameras, such photos are also taken by some more traditionally minded citizens. And so many women wear a hijab while driving. The irony is that as soon as they get out, they take it off. Among the countries that advise their citizens not to travel to Iran are Great Britain and Ireland, and the United States has made its stance quite visible with this warning in red. Do not travel, as they say, due to the risk of kidnapping, arbitrary arrest, and detention of the US citizens. That's right, Iran's attitude to Americans is complicated. You will soon find out why. Traffic regulation seems to be a non-concept on the local roads. Drivers cut each other every step of the way and change lanes so often and so fast as if they were playing a game of tag. They see no problem making a right turn from the far left lane, and red light here cannot guarantee you everyone will stop. Many roads don't have any markings, but the biggest challenge on the local roads is to navigate them on foot. Fuck. Crossing a street here is impossible because no one gives a damn that someone's crossing. You have to beg them, making hand gestures like, oh sorry, please let me pass, be so kind and slow down. No one gives a rat's ass. Pedestrians are the pariahs of the local roads.
Пешеходы самая низшая каста на дорогах.
Look at this man. He seems to have developed a skill to cross the street walking between the moving vehicles as if cutting through the traffic like some sort of a road whisperer. No one slows down for him, neither bikes nor cars. Yet he keeps moving undisturbed and confident. The sidewalks are also full of people. It's a real crowd. Look at this guy. He seems to be the only one not in a hurry. However, he isn't here to chill. He is simply taking a break from really hard work. His job is to move boxes. Young guys in Iran often work like this, hauling huge piles of boxes in the market aisles. At some point, I began to feel like the whole city of Tehran is one huge marketplace because shops are everywhere.
Здесь, если тебе нужно что-нибудь купить,
Here, if you need to buy something, like for example a car light, you don't just go to a shop that sells car lights. You go to a street that sells car lights. A street full of shops that sell the same thing, like car lights. They have streets selling batteries, streets selling paper supplies, streets for ovens, streets for shoes, streets for scarves. The amount of trade going on here is incredible. Here, for example, is a small corner shop that sells sticky tape. Nothing but tape on every shelf from top to bottom. This man sells tape day after day, and nothing else. Here's a guy who sells sunshades, sipping tea while touting his goodies. These two sweet young girls make rounds of the market selling chewing gum. Not for fun, they're working. They come from very poor families. And what little money they make, they can spend on toys. Here's a shop with copper dishes, pots, and pans that are so shiny it makes your eyes hurt. There is a street that sells books. Some have proper stalls. Some sell books right on the sidewalk. But still, they take care to place the books in pieces of cardboard, not on the ground. They're selling a remarkable quantity of copies of works by Dostoevsky and Chekhov. These writers seem to be in great esteem in Iran, and Chekhov's short stories are among the bestsellers. But check this out. 1984 by George Orwell sold in the streets of Tehran. I find the scale and the depth of the irony simply stunning, truly dumbfounding.
You think something forbidden in Iran, but that's the wrong way you look at this. Something are allowed. You think I think you have a mistake on this.
This is Sammy. He was born and raised in Tehran. His sense of humor is at times very dark. He says that it's the only thing that keeps him sane.
Are you okay with these rules? I mean, are you...
Yeah, everyone wants that. Why not? You need to get a slash. You need to get your hands cut. You need to execute. Why not?
To be more serious.
Because we are all masochists, you know?
To be honest, it beats me how Sammy manages to make jokes and watch the road. Not because he's a bad driver, but because traffic in Tehran is anyone's nightmare. If you recall. By the way, the traffic here is not only notoriously chaotic, it's also indicative of the deep crisis in the country. Take a look at the cars. Most of the cars on the road are either very old Renaults or Peugeots, or fairly old Renaults and Peugeots. Fairly old means about 10 years old. There are many locally manufactured cars, Iran's first automobile, the Pycon, and the vehicles made by the automaker Saipa. Luxury cars or even new cars stick out a mile here because car imports into the country are under strict sanctions. Should anyone nonetheless wish to buy a BMW or a Mercedes, they'll have to pay twice the price of the car, and the equally large cost of getting it into the country, a special car tax of sorts. Sammy is driving a Saipa car. It's almost 20 years old. It's a bit weather-beaten, but Sammy calls it his Cadillac. It's a joke, of course. The economy in the country is so bad that only a handful of people can afford a new car. The inflation rate in Iran reached 50% in 2022.
$100 в Иране это примерно 40.
100 US dollars gives you about 49 million Iranian rials. The money is so cheap here. A cup of coffee costs 1 million rials. This gets even more complicated when you find out that the locals are accustomed to quoting prices in tomans. Iranian toman was once an official currency, but today it's a super unit of the modern rial that equals 10 rials. By the way, currency exchange booths also quote the exchange rate in tomans, but the actual money they give you or accept from you are rials. So if you want to use cash here, it gets very confusing. The challenge grows when you find out that there are at least 3 different currency exchange rates: the official one, the unofficial one, and the back alley one. So you never know how much local cash your $100 will buy you.
Кэша ты получишь за $100.
The purchase of foreign currency by citizens of Iran is strictly regulated. One person is allowed to buy no more than 2,000 US dollars or 2,000 euros per year. There is no limit on the amount of foreign currency they can sell. But when you see the local streets, you'll know why this rule is basically irrelevant.
Вот и все эти люди, мимо которых мы сейчас проходим.
All these people in this street are unofficial currency exchange dealers, and any of them can sell you some cash or wire it to a local plastic card of your choosing.
На иранскую карту.
Ever you like you can get, and literally hundreds of people are in this shadow business, even though it is not legal as such.
Потому что это вроде бы как не особо.
Incidentally, they offer a better exchange rate than the official banks.
Курс намного выгоднее, чем официальные банки.
And the difference is substantial, about 10%.
Прилично, процентов на 10.
Global payment systems don't work in Iran. You can use here Visa, MasterCard, or Union Pay. Sanctions were imposed in Iran before plastic cards took over the world, so technically Iran has never even had Visa or MasterCard in the country. But it has developed its own domestic payment system. It's called hijab.
В общем, местные выдают
All visitors to Iran are issued plastic cards like this one.
те, кто как-то...
Those who work with foreigners, such as tourists, usually carry a whole assortment of such cards to give you
В
out.
общем, через крипту. Крипта здесь
And in a
работает
nutshell, you move your money to this card via crypto, and crypto works here as anywhere else.
Я
Once it's done, I can use my Iranian card while I'm here, and when I leave, they will block it, and that's it.
Ирана эту банковскую карточку просто заблокируют. Все.
I've never seen or used this kind of payment system before. They have developed it out of despair, but the truth is that it works really well because cards are accepted absolutely
На
everywhere.
самом деле это ужасно удобно. Потому что карточки принимают абсолютно везде.
Even sellers on sidewalks like this one accept cards. The locals almost never use cash because if they choose to, they'd have to carry bags full of money bills. Every time they give me a transaction receipt, I feel like a millionaire. See, 8 million rials, my dinner bill. That's about $15 or $16, and there were 3 of us, so it's fairly cheap.
На троих человек это не очень дорого, но сам
But
факт.
in local currency, we paid 8 million. Sounds really grand. So the easiest way to become a millionaire is not to cheat people out of money. No, just come to Iran. 1 gallon of gas costs about 37 cents.
Это поездка в Иран. Все по миллиону. Все по миллиону, полмиллиона.
Iran has the 3rd cheapest gas in the world, after Venezuela and Saudi Arabia.
Но в Иране просто супер.
Underground transport in Iran is also incredibly cheap. It's hard to believe that subway rides can actually be that cheap. A single one-way ride costs about 5 cents, a round trip 10 cents, and sky is the limit.
Езди не хочу.
The subway in Tehran is very modern and very clean. It transports over 3 million people daily. With the permanent chaos on the roads, the subway really saves the day for many. The one thing that's notably different from other subways of the world is that carriages are classified as either mixed or strictly female, the latter always being the first and the last ones on each train. This classification is in fact an optional thing, and not at all mandatory. As far as I understand, a man can ride in female carriage, and women are totally free to ride in mixed carriages. But I think the girls will know what I mean when I say riding in a female-only space feels a lot more relaxed and comfortable because you can be sure there won't be any groping of any kind. Of course, these things are more subtle and sensitive in a Muslim country. But anyways, that's interesting.
Тонкая материя. Ну, в целом это интересно.
Guys, if you like my video and if you like what we're doing, I would really appreciate if you support us on Patreon, on Pioneer or on PayPal, and we try to make even more great films from new dangerous places for you. Thank you. All the links are in the description. Please donate.
Поговорим про интернет.
Let's talk about the internet. As soon as I landed in Iran, all VPN clients that had worked perfectly well until then died. They died in an instant and have been dead ever since. I've downloaded a couple of dozen new VPN clients, and only one of them has been more or less functional. Well, rather less.
Приложений VPN, и только одно хиленько работает.
All access to the websites banned by the government is completely blocked. They cut all the traffic trying to reach them. This method was borrowed by Iran from China and has proven to be extremely efficient. The tightest censorship is applied in the evenings. There's almost nothing to see or read. All political and religious content is blocked. So is porn and all global social networks.
И WhatsApp, и Telegram,
WhatsApp, Telegram, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, practically everything is banned.
внутренние социальные
I
сети.
think only some domestic social networks are allowed.
Местные умудряются.
And yet locals somehow manage to run Instagram accounts. And I've seen Instagram usernames on the signs for businesses around here.
Instagram никнеймом.
The crazy part is that even Iran's own officials have Instagram accounts. For example, the country's supreme leader has almost 5 million Instagram followers. We're on our way to the Iran Mall. You might not believe it, but it's considered to be the world's largest shopping center. That's right, even larger than the Dubai Mall, with a total area of over 10 million square feet, including all hotels, parking lots, and all infrastructure. And the big question is, why does Iran need such an enormous shopping mall, given that due to the sanctions, all international brands and suppliers don't trade with the country? The thing is that there was a certain thawing in the relations between the USA and Iran during the presidency of Barack Obama. Iran promised to make its nuclear program transparent, and the United States promised to ease the sanctions. And that's why they built this huge shopping mall. But the next president, Donald Trump, took a different stance, and the relations got tense again. Meanwhile, the huge Iran Mall is still there, complete with a library, a mosque, a skating rink, a hotel, and naturally, hundreds of shops. Curiously enough, there are no empty spaces. All the shops are functioning and filled with domestic brands. But then I noticed something else. Look, here's the Tefal logo, and the Samsungs, and the Apples. All these brands don't trade with Iran due to the sanctions. I'm pretty sure they don't even know about these stores in the country.
How much for the iPhone 13?
$128 million.
And in dollars?
2,000
and a half.
That's very expensive. It's not just overpriced, it's a ripoff. It's too expensive. I mean, even with all the sanctions.
An
iPhone in Iran is a luxury item, and very few can afford it. For example, this guy who works at an Apple store has a phone that's 10 years old.
You cannot afford yourself to buy iPhone.
دیگه علاقه‌ای ندارم بخرم خرجای مهمتری.
He has an interest to do that. He has more important thing to
Like apartments, food, safety.
All in all, almost all sanctioned brands can be found on sale in Iran, and that's not through parallel import. Many locals make money bringing in small batches of quality merchandise from abroad for sale at home, and they've got lots of stuff, including perfume and beauty products. They've got Gucci, Armani, and Dior here. Take your pick. And I noticed that the prices are about the same as I've seen home. For example, a bottle of perfume by Gucci costs about $80. The markup is for the overhead expenses required to get it into the country. Believe it or not, some guys traveled to Italy in order to bring Italian perfume back home. By the looks of it, almost 60% of all the merchandise on sale in this mall is clothing, and most of it is locally manufactured. Here, for example, they've got clothes that look pretty much like what any Western department store would offer, like Macy's or something like that. They've got things for any taste here. You just have to look. They even have authentic items by famous international brands. For example, here, they've got a Jordan hat, and I've seen Nike and Adidas here and there. So they do have all these brands on sale, even though they're not common. But 50 years ago, they were. US-branded clothes were widely available to the general public. This is what Iran looked like in the 1970s. Women wearing miniskirts and bright colors. Men in bell-bottom jeans and t-shirts. People in Tehran danced, twist, and rock and roll and listened to jazz music. The city streets were full of brand new Mercedes, Cadillac, and Peugeot cars. This fashionably dressed couple on a red Honda is none other than the head of the state, Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, and his wife, Farah. Until the Islamic Revolution in 1979, Iran had been a monarchy ruled by shahs. Mohammad Reza Shah welcomed and encouraged westernization and cooperation with all major global powers. Under his rule, Iran had headquarters of all major corporations, including Johnson & Johnson, Shell, Coca-Cola, and many others. In the mid-70s, visiting Tehran was as chic and exciting as visiting Paris or New York City. In 1971, the Shah decided to celebrate the 2500th anniversary of the founding of the Persian Empire by throwing a party of the century. He had an oasis built in the middle of desert and had it filled with trees, flowers, fountains, and thousands of songbirds that were ordered from Europe. He sent out invitations to the heads of 65 countries of the world, including kings, emperors, sheikhs, emirs, presidents, and prime ministers. Every guest had been assigned personal staff and a chef. But after the party, the trees withered, the birds died, and the tents turned to ruins. So what had caused the Islamic Revolution? Despite the glossy appearances, the country was suffering from the regime's political repressions, as well as poverty, inflation, and unemployment. The Shah wasn't eager to invest all the oil money into the welfare of his subjects, the country's population. Also, many were very critical of the openly Western lifestyle and saw it unfit for the Muslim nation.
Unfortunately, former king what did they do with this money? They didn't pay about hardware in our country. They didn't make new roads, new railway stations, nothing. They only began to import luxury things. Expensive alcoholic drinks, expensive things for makeup, and something like this. To buy many weapons like chieftain tanks from England.
This man with a well-tended beard is called Mahdi. In 1979, he was there to witness the Islamic Revolution. He remembers very well what Iran was like before. That's right, many of the things that are banned now were allowed. But if you happen to be critical of the government,
new generation see many clips about before revolution that everywhere was full of love, full of peace. If you wanted to go upper than your belly and for thinking, for talking, it was forbidden.
So in 1979, Iran changed dramatically. Thousands of protesters took to the streets across the country. They stormed and vandalized administrative buildings, burned cars and portraits of the Shah, and demanded a radical change. They literally worshipped their religious leader in exile, Ruhollah Khomeini, who was an eloquent speaker and had a powerful charisma. People of Iran believed that Khomeini was capable of creating a real Islamic republic and stopping the nation's transformation into a pro-American state with corrupt values and miniskirts.
Our slogans was freedom, equality, fraternity. There was not anything about economy. We wanted freedom in thinking, in talking.
And so, driven by these romantic revolutionary slogans, the Islamic Revolution took down the old regime. The secular state ceased to exist. Everything non-Muslim was outlawed. All the music, dancing, movies, and so on. Women's rights were seriously restricted.
Это
tattoos are neither officially allowed nor officially prohibited in Iran. They're in the legally gray area, something that's not regulated, but overall not very welcome in the society. The thing is that Islam considers tattoos to be haram or forbidden, based on the belief that a human body was created by God, Allah, and therefore is sacred the way it is, and any attempts to make any changes to it are thus unacceptable. And yet people make and wear tattoos in Iran too, but certain restrictions apply. You can get tattoos done only by a same-gender artist. You can't give tattoos to minors, and those adults who get a tattoo have to be ready to face some consequences.
For example, for some official works, they may pick on you. They may say that we cannot hire you, or I don't know, say things that maybe you are not mentally healthy. They take you to mental hospital or take you to psychologist, and they want some documents that you are healthy, mentally healthy, because they think that if someone has tattoo on their body, they are trying to maybe hurt themselves, I don't know, some kind of illness.
Meet Melina. She is a tattoo artist. She wears a number of tattoos herself, and her eyebrows pierced. She chose this profession obviously for reasons other than inflicting pain and enjoying it. She had an ambition to become a really good tattoo artist, and she worked hard and made it happen. It took her 4 years to open her own studio, where she both serves clients and teaches other aspiring tattoo artists. But if you don't know where exactly to go, you won't ever find this place. As you can see, the entrance to Melina's tattoo parlor is not marked in any way. It's just a gap in a row of shops with no sign whatsoever, because that's definitely prohibited. The law forbids to advertise tattoo parlors in Iran, so everyone interested simply has to come to an address mentioned somewhere on Instagram or elsewhere and walk to the designated floor. This tattoo parlor does not exist in legal terms, so all the artists who work here are not protected by law in any way.
If someone comes to your salon and doesn't pay and leaves, okay, don't pay for his tattoos, there is nothing you can do. There is no one you can tell, there is no organ you can sue the person. There is nothing you can do.
The police won't even investigate a crime like this. They won't do a thing, won't bother. However, they did bother to come and inspect Melina's business several times by now to make sure nothing illegal or immoral is going on here. And speaking of tattoos, there's one more completely bizarre thing you have to know if you live here and if you want to get a driver's license.
So
yes,
if
about
people
that.
want to take a driving license,
They tell you to get naked and they check all your parts of your body. And if you have a tattoo on yourself, for example, they take you to psychologist and then give you a driving license only for 1 year or 2 years.
For foreign visitors to Iran, even a trip to a local grocery store is a kind of tourist attraction. Since all the recognizable products by globally trading companies are not imported into Iran, the merchandise on the shelves looks so unusual. I see no shortage of anything here. Despite the sanctions, you won't see empty shelves and people queuing for hours to buy at least something. No, the store is full to the brim. There's everything you can possibly want here. It's just that everything is domestically produced. There are no imported goods, not even from the neighboring Turkey. Unlike local clothing brands, some locally made foods do in fact look familiar to an outsider. Look, they've got a shelf of ketchup here, and it looks a lot like Heinz, right? The look is immediately recognizable. But look at the brand name. It's Heinz, not Heinz. This way they get to keep the familiar look without formally breaking the law. Here they've got yogurt called Danette, but the overall look and branding reminds you of the French Danone, doesn't it? And now the cherry on top. Right in the middle of a grocery store in Iran, you see a display of America's most recognizable item. Despite all the sanctions, all the bans, they do have Coca-Cola in Iran. Here it says Coca-Cola in Persian, and it also says here that it's an original product. The truth is that it's not really the original product. Iran has developed its own recipe for Coke, but has kept using the original brand name. They've got the shelves full of Sprite and Mirinda. They didn't even bother to change the lettering in the brand name. They just kept it. And the taste is quite similar to the original Coke we used to have at home, in Russia. In 2022, Russia became the most sanctioned country in the world, surpassing Iran that had been under severe sanctions for decades. The history of sanctions against Iran goes back 44 years and takes us to this two-story building with a flagpole that now has the US flag torn to shreds on it. In 1979, the Shah, who had to flee the revolution, found refuge in the United States. The new government demanded the Shah to be extradited back home, but the United States refused to cooperate, and then a group of militarized Iranian college students took over the US Embassy in Tehran. This building right here, they took 66 people hostage and demanded the US to hand over the Shah and his family. The story of this crisis was fictionalized in the 2012 film Argo, a great movie. The US government began pressuring Iran in order to secure the release of the hostages. They stopped all oil imports from Iran, froze Iran's assets in American banks, and imposed sanctions banning the supply of technologies. But that didn't prove to be enough. The revolutionary government kept demanding the extradition of the Shah. The US severed diplomatic relations with Iran. The anti-American sentiment in Iran kept growing. 444 days later, Iran finally let the hostages go, after it couldn't get the Shah anymore due to his death. The consequences of that hostage crisis are playing out till today. The bilateral relations between the USA and Iran are still severed, and the pressure from the US imposed sanctions only grows with time. The former US Embassy has been transformed into the Museum of Propaganda. We wanted to film what's inside, but only managed to shoot this room, the desk with the typewriter, and my reaction to what I saw. Wow, that's aggressive. Quite angry, really. They have portraits of the US presidents on this wall with strokes of red paint over their faces and lots of other things that show anger towards America. After that, they told us to stop taking video and store the camera in the backpack. Basically, they've got the authentic furniture and furnishings dating back to the 1970s. Some surviving documents exposing the spying, and some evil machinery used to fake official papers. It had the look and feel of the early James Bond movies, with computers so massive they take up half the office space. Soundproof booths, impregnable vaults, a real den of spies. But the most impressive thing of all is the wall around the former embassy. It's all covered with art, whose main theme is how much Iran loathes the United States. Here, for example, they've painted a negotiating table with a representative of Iran on one side, dressed in a green formal suit, and a representative of the USA right across. Above the table, he looks just as formal, wearing a suit and a tie. But below, his boots and pants are covered with blood, which symbolizes the bloody politics of the United States and how awful they are. Here's another mural, an artist's vision of the coat of arms of the United States. Instead of holding an olive branch and a bunch of arrows in its talons, the bald eagle holds bullets and syringes. The image is complemented with everything the Iranian government believes to be the vice spread by America: drugs, guns, and dirty money. The choice of color is also telling. Red signifies blood, the color of all evil. You can see footprints and smears on the white bits of the wall left by people literally kicking it and spitting on it. That's what people do. They come here to express their attitude towards the US policies and their support of their own government this way. Curiously enough, just a step away from this wall of aggression, we saw 3 Iranian girls without hijab smoking and snacking on potato chips. The protest that shook the country in 2022, in response to the death of a 22-year-old Mahsa Amini, evolved into a new revolution, the hijab revolution. But if you take a closer look, it wasn't only about hijabs.
I think that scared generation just raised a new generation and gave them, for example, my parents have showed me that it's okay for me to stand up for myself.
This girl with a dazzling smile is Hasti. She wears black nail polish, a crop top, and skinny pants. Nothing special, you might think, but very daring for a girl in Iran. Having your tummy exposed in public is even more dangerous than having your head uncovered, but many girls dress like this at home. Hasti is a junior student at the University of Tehran. In September 2022, students also joined the protests.
In our university, when they were giving slogans, we were giving slogans. The slogan, Women, Life, Freedom, communication, the whole connection was really beautiful, that we are all understanding and supporting each other.
Hasti speaks English and French. She learned them so one day she could leave the country. Hasti is also a great singer, and she plays both piano and guitar.
Hey, welcome to the Hotel California. Such a lovely place, such a lovely face.
The sad truth is that Hasti cannot even dream of a career of a singer in Iran because women here are not allowed to sing on stage or publish video of themselves singing at home.
It's just forbidden for women to sing and for them to have concerts and everything. And because they say it's a law in Quran that has said that women can't sing because it's so appealing to men that it would just irritate men maybe. That's their way, that's their maneuver. Whenever they see something that's appealing, extremely appealing to men, they just forbid women to do that. And actually that's a really funny fact in Iran. It's okay for women to sing if a man sings with them. It's so funny.
Actually, yeah.
Yes.
Explanations are really...
It would take a lot less time to say what women are allowed to do in Iran than saying all the things they're not allowed to do, because there's so many. Women can't go abroad without the consent of their father, husband, or brother. They can't sing on stage. They can't rap. They can't drive a motorbike. They can't really ride a bicycle. They can't kiss their boyfriend in public. They can't be seen in public without a hijab. They can't wear short sleeves. Can't check into a hotel with the boyfriend. They can't rent an apartment together with the boyfriend. Men are also not allowed to co-rent a place or get a room together. But the point is that in every aspect of life, women have to deal with restrictions, and many of them are really harsh. In January 2023, a young Iranian couple, they barely turned 21, was sentenced to 10 years of prison time for posting a video of themselves dancing in the street. In this video, you can see the boy and the girl holding hands and him lifting her off the ground in a dance move, while she has her head uncovered. The authorities convinced them of, I quote, promoting corruption and prostitution and colluding against national security, end of quote. Overall, Tehran feels a lot like any other metropolitan city on our planet. Like everywhere else, people are in a hurry to their appointments and mostly focus on their work. I had barely finished saying these words on camera when two men in civilian clothes approached me, and it was immediately clear that they were from the security services. And that meant serious problems for me and my crew. They questioned us right on that very spot for an hour and a half. The heat is unbearable as it is. It's nearing 100 Fahrenheit, and they made me sweat even more with their questions. I'm still all shaking. It was very scary. They asked us who we were, what we were doing here, where we were staying and going, why we stopped in this particular area, even though no maps like Google Maps had any indication that this area is somehow off limits or restricted. The question is because we were not allowed to be in that area. That's the official reason they gave us. And this particular area is off limits for foreigners, and we can't be there, let alone film anything on camera. At the time I was wearing a lapel mic. Fuck. I ripped it off and hid it in my pants, hoping they won't see it. My flight home is tomorrow morning. And I'm simply scared to go to the airport because I need to be able to take all the footage from this trip with me. I don't know what to expect at the airport. What else they might want to search or inspect because they have absolutely all details, and strictly speaking, finding out where I work won't be a problem. I feel absolutely terrified. Taking video on camera is an activity that, like many other things in Iran, is under lots of restrictions that apply, and it's really best to avoid being seen here with a professional camera at all. In general, while I was planning this trip to Iran, I talked to many Iranians asking them about how I might be able to use camera, because to use it freely, I'd need to get an official permit. But if I were to get an official permit, my shooting locations and themes would be strictly regulated, and I wouldn't be able to talk freely about what's really going on here. And absolutely everyone told me that, first of all, I needn't be afraid. The one thing you really have to be careful about here is alcohol. There are no two opinions on that matter in Iran. Alcohol has been outlawed in the country since 1979 by the Islamic Revolution. Consumption of alcohol can be punished by an enormous fine, or a day in prison, or even whipping. Truth be told, there haven't been any news lately about anyone being whipped for drinking booze, but the very idea of such possibilities seems totally wild. There are plenty of videos online capturing this kind of corporal punishment, and when they do it, they don't spare the hapless booze lovers. The punishment is bloody and takes months to heal. But history knows cases that were much worse than that. In 2012, 2 men were put to death to persistent alcohol consumption in the Khorasan province. They were arrested for the 3rd time, and 3 arrests are followed by a death sentence. If caught, sellers of alcohol get one of their fingers cut off as a form of punishment. If they're caught 5 times, they lose a hand. If any of them is sentenced to a fine or time in prison, that's a lot of good luck for them. It is true that there are no bars or nightclubs in Tehran. Well, if there are, they're so well hidden and kept in secret that it's virtually impossible to get there. Most of the time, when people want to have fun, they party at home. They agree to come to someone's place and have fun just like people all over the world do despite all the bans and prohibitions. And today, I am invited to join such a party. Meet Anton. He is the owner of this place, and he's hosting the party tonight. Anton is a film director. He makes small documentaries and video clips. He works mostly from home, where he has his own photo and sound recording space. He likes to give parties like this one, with loud music and women free to wear anything that's not allowed by the law, like shoulder straps and short skirts. This lovely blonde woman in a mini dress, with her hairstyle like Marilyn Monroe's, is Anton's wife.
But I myself come from a religious family, but a flexible one, not a very strict religious family. So, for example, our parents, like my parents or my aunt, my uncles, are religious people. But at the next generation, which are the sons and daughters, we are not religious at all.
We barely started talking when friends called Anton to join them for a toast. That's right, you heard me. They did have alcohol at the party, and that's among ordinary things for Iranians. Whatever is forbidden is allowed. Remember this formula. The only difference between partying in Iran and partying anywhere else I saw was that alcohol comes in Iran in bottles like this, in soft drink bottles. The alcohol is homemade. Some people make it at home and then sell it, all in secret, of course. Suppliers of alcohol are called dealers here. As you can guess, these people don't advertise their services, but mostly like every Iranian has contacts of at least a few dealers in their phone. Absolutely every Iranian knows where and how to get some booze.
These underground dealers that I'm mentioning, they are not very, I can't say, they're not in a very scary situation. This is important. Yeah? For example, I know a guy that is an alcohol dealer, and since 15 years ago, I remember that he's been doing this job, and he has never been arrested, you know?
A quart of hooch costs $5 in Iran. Properly branded distillery manufactured alcohol is also available in the black market, but it'll cost 5 to 6 times more than in any place where it's not forbidden. As you can see, aside from hooch, Ashan's guests have been treated to a bottle of Jack Daniels. Its black market price here is about $80, so it's more of an expensive accessory than a drink. As much as this home party may seem free and fun, the world outside Ashan's apartment remains the same, full of bans, sanctions, and oppression. And every single day he and his wife think whether they should try and emigrate. But there's one thing that is keeping them here.
So this warm relations that I have with my family, with my friends, with the guys in the neighborhood.
Danny, the guy who's playing the guitar, writes music. He is the author of many tracks featured in films. Some of them have even made it to the Berlin Film Festival's official competition. This young woman is Mina. She is an artist and her main interest is capturing the life of women in Iran. To be honest, I've seen parties like this only in Soviet films about dissidents like Dovlatov and Brodsky, and they all look like ancient history to me. But I've discovered that in Iran, it's how people live even today. And it blows my mind completely. It's unbelievable. It's like an extra dimension somewhere between the official policies and the stereotypes where you find the reality. The laws and government bans are outside this place. And inside, there's cigarette, smoke, sound of guitar and piano music, and people doing whatever they want and saying whatever they think. I keep asking only one question in my head.
Everything is forbidden in Iran, but actually everything is...
Everything is forbidden, but you can do everything in Iran.
How it's possible?
With money.
With money?
With money and with secret relationships.
Really?
Yes, if you have someone to introduce yourself to secret places, you can enter at places. You can. There are lots of private parties with celebrities.
This is Paria. She makes a living teaching English to children and adults, but sometimes lends a hand as a designer when Ashan directs short films. She looks like a free, independent woman, and she thinks like one. But something about this freedom feels like its real source of origin is despair.
It's not that strict that you think. It's not that if you think it's 100% strict, it's not true. I think it's 20% strict, not 100% strict. I'm going to share some memories of mine with you. I drink alcohol in the street when I'm driving. It's one of my hobbies. I really enjoy that, believe me. I've done it 1,000 times and I really enjoyed it. You know why? Because it's forbidden.
You can find anything that's banned in Iran. Maybe you're getting a bit tired of hearing this. When you start hanging out with the locals, you find out that Tehran even has cafes serving alcohol. And the way they serve it is pretty special.
Значит, смотрите, схема такая. Ты приезжаешь в определенное кафе.
They have to come to a particular cafe, and they won't let in just anyone. They need to know you. If you got in, you get a table and make an order, something to drink. And that's where it gets interesting. The waiter comes back with a big bag that has bottles in it. The same kind of bottles full of homemade hooch we saw at the party. The kind drunks get somewhere, or teenagers who want to try it for the first time in the park. Pretty much everything we find an ordinary part of our lives becomes a complicated affair here in Iran.
But when someone just wants to change you and just disrespects you, that bothers me, that irritates me, and I just want them to. Why can't we live in a society with our own beliefs? If my belief is not hurting you, then why do you care what I believe, you know?
Very few people know the Tehran we saw and showed you today. Crazy, wild, open, and, as odd as it sounds, free. The answer is people. It is people who find a way to enjoy life and celebrate it even under massive restrictions. People of Iran are super friendly and hospitable. Many smile to other people in streets while they go about their business, like to me or other fellow citizens. Can you imagine this happening back at home? I can, to be honest. But here, it's a part of their life. They're also extremely fond of small talk. You can often see people talking to each other about this and that for a pretty long time. And you could think that they're friends and know each other. But every time it turns out they just met. And this exchange, it's part of their culture, their good manners code. To be honest, it's hard to think of a nation other than Iran where people understand Russian so well. It's not like they quickly understand what you're explaining. It's actually the fact that you don't even need to explain. Whenever we talked about our countries, our societies, most of the times, we simply ended up nodding to each other and sharing a meaningful silence. We live separated by thousands of miles. Our cultures are very different, but our regimes have made us closer because we understand each other better because of them. The Middle East is the last place on earth where I ever expected the locals to say, "Oh right, you're Russian, so you know." And be on point. On the other hand, it's amazing to feel so much understanding in a foreign country wherever you go. But on the other hand, it makes me sad too. Because we all understand that this understanding is the product of being forced to live like we do.
На одной волне очень вынужденно находимся.